All right, what's the most mispronounced town name on the Oregon coast? It's got to be Yachats. Not Yachats, Yachats. We're going to talk about Yachats in this video, why it's so great. Stay tuned to learn more. Hey, what's up everybody? This is Clem with the Home Team Brokers coming to you from the Oregon coast. If this is your first time to the channel living on the Oregon coast, make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the little bell to get notified every time we drop a new video. We talk to people all the time who are moving to Oregon, relocating to the Oregon coast, and we love to help with that process. So if that's you, give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email, or click the link down below in the description of the video and schedule a Zoom call with us. Either way, we would love to help with your move to the Oregon coast. All right, we've probably gone too long without making a video on Yachats. This is an area that is so incredible, so scenic, so beautiful, really a hidden gem. In fact, it's referred to as the gem of the Oregon coast, literally. And Yachats is a little bit under the radar because it is relatively isolated. It's not as accessible from the rest of Western Oregon coming off of I-5. You have to get over from Eugene, or you have to get over from like Corvallis or Salem and go north or south to get to Yachats. It's also a small town. You're looking at a town of just under 800 people approximately in terms of population. So all of those elements, create a town, again, that tends to fly under the radar a little bit, but once we start talking to people about the Oregon coast, especially as they're coming from out of state, we start to look at different areas and kind of narrow things down in a home search. Yachats tends to always creep up the list, if not become people's top choice as far as a relocation destination. So this video is meant to talk a little bit more about Yachats and what makes it so great, what makes it so desirable, and also, why it may not necessarily be a place that you would want to consider. So Yachats is located on the central Oregon coast. It's in the southernmost point of Lincoln County. Lincoln County is a very populous county on the Oregon coast, primarily consisting of Lincoln City and Newport, two towns of about 10,000 people that are really popular tourist destinations, really popular destinations for people to move to. These are areas that do have a large population of full-time residents as well, so you get a little more of that community, more amenities that a bigger town can offer relative or compared to a town like, say, Yachats, for example, that has under 1,000 people. So Yachats is just about 23 miles south of Newport. It's 8 miles south of Waldport, and it's 23 miles north of Florence. But because of the way that the geology is laid out in this area, it really feels more like an extension of Newport and Waldport. Because if you drive south from Newport, you have an uninterrupted stretch of highway that goes right along the beach that maintains a relatively consistent elevation. So when you're in Yachats, you feel like you're in the same region, the same area as like a Newport and a Waldport in a lot of ways. To get to Florence, again, it's 23 miles south, but you have to go up and over Cape Perpetua, past the Hasita Head Lighthouse, which in that area, ton of great hiking, some of the best viewpoints on the Oregon coast, incredible scenery, but you can't drive very fast. It winds up the mountain and then back down into Florence. It's a beautiful drive, but it's probably going to take you a lot longer to make the drive from Yachats to Florence than it would from Yachats to Newport, although Yachats is exactly right in the middle of these two towns. So with that said, if you were living in Yachats, because it is such a smaller town and it doesn't have as many of those amenities you would need day to day, or in particular, things for like emergencies or things that you would need to access, like healthcare, for example, you're probably going to find yourself driving up into Newport from time to time, or even Waldport. Waldport's a relatively small town as well, a little bit of a bigger population, but again, Newport is kind of the closest big city where you can get up to the hospital, get up to some of the big box stores, and have more variety overall as far as bars and restaurants and things to do. And Yachats definitely is a tourist destination. This is a town that has consistently, collected accolades over the years as being, one of the best coastal towns in the country. I think about 15 years ago, there was a magazine that ranked it in the top 10 small towns in the country overall. So between the scenery, the local businesses, the local infrastructure there, and the activities and everything that you can do in the area, I think people recognize once they start learning about Yachats, or especially once they spend time in Yachats, that this is a really incredible area. But as I mentioned, being in between Newport and Florence, so from Florence, you can get directly over from I-5 from Eugene, or in Newport, you can get directly over from the valley, from like Corvallis area, or even from Salem, you can get over to Lincoln City and then go south into Yachats. But there's not a ton of access due east of Yachats, so you don't get all of that traffic coming in or kind of converging into one point like you have in some of these other towns that actually have highways that come in from Western Oregon or from I-5. Yachats is set right on the mouth of the Yachats River. And a lot of coastal towns in Oregon do have rivers coming in from the east. So that's not a unique dynamic necessarily, but I think one of the more unique things about Yachats as far as just the environment that you're in is Highway 101 goes right through, and then you have a few blocks on the west side where you have, basically like oceanfront properties. Even if you're a few blocks off, you can walk down to the ocean, take in the sights and everything. But set back above town or kind of behind town is this huge hill. So you have this really dramatic elevation change right behind town, where just a few blocks off of the highway, where you have most of your businesses, shops and restaurants and things like that, it goes straight up the hill and really, and aside from just looking around and that being a really cool landscape, you have houses up on this hill. So kind of the residential area, the primary residential area for Yachats extends up this hill, which is going to create some of the most dramatic views that you can get on the Oregon coast. So between directly in town and some of the incredible beaches you have to the north, like Wakanda and Tilikum Beach, and Cape Perpetua to the south, all of that creates this incredible, beautiful landscape, which is why I think people call Yachats the gem of the Oregon coast. People locally refer to it as the biggest little traffic jam on the Oregon coast, because Highway 101 runs directly through Yachats. So, this main street, this main strip of town with businesses and shops and restaurants and galleries and things like that, goes right through the highway where people are traveling north and south. But there's crosswalks, there's a lot of pedestrian traffic, and that tends to slow people down quite a bit. People have to stop for folks crossing the street and everything. And so traffic can get a little backed up, in busier parts of the summer and things like that. I've never been through Yachats coming in from the north or south where there's been like a line of traffic necessarily. I think it probably can happen in some kind of the peak times, but few and far between. And even in the summer, when the Oregon coast is most busy, you're probably really just looking at that dynamic Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and it's a little bit quieter during the weeks. I think, for a lot of people coming locally throughout Oregon to the Oregon coast, tends to be a weekend destination. I mean, you'll get people going out and doing like a week and staying, in some of these different towns for longer than 2 or 3 nights. But by and large, the Oregon coast has always seemed to be a little bit more of a weekend destination than a place you go to for like a week. So because of that, during the weekdays, a lot of these towns, even some of the more popular, the most popular tourist towns do tend to slow down quite a bit during the week. So the word Yachats comes from the Siletz language, and it means dark water at the foot of the mountain. And kind of based on what I've already described, you can see, that dynamic exists. You have all the kind of basalt rock, down right at the water. Of course, you have this mountain, this huge hill right up above town. So you have that dynamic. So of course, that name makes sense. And that is one thing to mention too, is you have a pretty rugged coastline through this area. Again, if you get north, you can get up to like Wakanda Beach and Tillicum Beach, and into Walport, into Newport. And there are some beaches there that are a little bigger, more flat, just sandy beaches, kind of what you would be envisioning if you were spending time on a beach at the Oregon coast. But directly in Yachats, it's much rockier, much more rugged. You don't have the same beach access. So I think the sightseeing, the views, the environment, the landscape that you're in, really dramatic, epic views, very beautiful. But you don't have as much in the way of, these, 3, 5, 7 mile long beaches that you can get in other parts of the Oregon coast. So on one hand, you're not going to have as much beach or as much access to beach, but you can drive 5, 10, 15 minutes and you can get to some incredible beaches that are exactly what you're probably envisioning. So a little bit of a different dynamic there in Yachats as far as the landscape, but that's part of what makes it so great. Yachats is another one of those towns on the Oregon coast where you're not going to find fast food, you're not going to find national retail chains, things like that. Every business you see right in town are locally owned businesses, and I think that really adds to the dynamic. There are a few towns on the Oregon coast that are like this. Manzanita comes to mind, for example. I think Manzanita is actually a very good comparison to Yachats when you look at the size, some of what you can get as far as landscape, although Manzanita has much more kind of vast beaches. But in Manzanita, you're right at the foot of Neahkahnie Mountain, for example. So there are a lot of similarities there. But back to my point is, there are these smaller towns on the Oregon coast where, again, you're not going to get these, big national retail chains, or, franchises, things like that. You're going to get local coffee shops, restaurants, breweries. Yachats Brewing is great. Galleries, art galleries, things like that. So you're going to have a lot to do in Yachats on a smaller scale for sure, but the offerings overall as far as kind of the in-town activities are very consistent with what you can get up and down the Oregon coast. I think in a place like Yachats, it's not nearly as diluted as some other towns that have, 10 or 15 art galleries and 25 restaurants and things like that. I mean, you are limited in what you can get, but in my experience in Yachats, everything has always been really great. I also think Yachats punches above its weight a little bit when it comes to activities in the community and things to do throughout the year. You have the annual 4th of July parade, you have the rubber duck races, you have the Yachats Music Festival, there's also a Celtic Music Festival in the fall, there's a mushroom festival in Yachats. So there's a lot of community activities and events throughout the year to participate in. And for a town, again, that's relatively small compared to other towns up and down the Oregon coast, these are great things to have because I think it probably keeps the energy really high. The anticipation for these events are great. It does bring in a lot of people from out of the area, but then once the dust settles, it goes back to being just the great small town that it is. And I think if you're living in Yachats, I think probably one of the biggest draws is that it is a smaller town. You can have a little more room to breathe and spread out, although the houses in town are somewhat densely populated. So it's not like because it's a small town, you have all quarter acre, half acre, acre lots or anything like that. Although north and south in some unincorporated communities, you can get a little bit more land, but that is relatively few and far between. So I think the small town aspect, though, overall is a big draw to Yachats. And I think if you're looking for an area that really really captures kind of the essence of the beauty and just the kind of the spirit and the feeling of being at the Oregon coast. Yachats does that perfectly. There's some great hiking access. Again, you have Cape Perpetua, and then to the east you have the Siuslaw National Forest. A ton of great hiking throughout there. Whale watching is a huge activity in Yachats. So on the west side of town, there's this little park, kind of parking area where I've pulled up there before just to like eat lunch when I was passing through Yachats. You know, packed a sandwich for the day, pulled over into the parking lot, ate my sandwich, and looked out, and you know, you could see whales breaching and blowing up water. I mean, it's incredible. So whale watching is a really big attraction to the area. There's also the Yachats Community Park, which has a boardwalk built over some wetlands. So that's really cool. So there really is a lot to do here. And again, I think Yachats does punch above its weight a little bit as far as activities and things you can do. And although you are relatively isolated, again, Florence and Newport, two much larger towns, are in pretty close proximity. So in Newport, you have a hospital. In Florence, you have a hospital. There is some healthcare access in Waldport as well, which is just 8 miles north. So you can get variety in the immediate region, and you can get a lot of what you would, maybe need, day to day, or kind of in case of emergency, or anything in between. And I think on the other hand too, if Yachats is a place that you fall in love with, but can't find a house there, for example, just can't make it work for whatever reason, you could live in like a Waldport, even Newport, or Florence to the south, and get to Yachats on a regular basis. So you can be in the region, but not necessarily live in Yachats, and still get the benefit of everything that Yachats has to offer. On one hand, being a small town, very picturesque, and just a few little businesses there in town, I think that is a really big draw for some people, but I think for other people it can be a little bit of a deterrent. They don't want to be as isolated. They want to be in a place that has a little more people and a little bit of a larger population. So you can get the best of both worlds living either right in Yachats or near Yachats, if it's an area that is of interest to you. All right, so of course we have to talk about the housing market. Because Yachats is so small, the housing stock is very, very small as well. But if you look at the data, Yachats is a little bit of a buyer's market. I think it is kind of a niche specialty type community or market where there's a lot of people that really love it and they really want to move there, but you don't see houses totally flying off the shelf. Houses are typically going to be sitting for 45, 50, 60 days on average if you look at average days on market. And that's really the biggest indicator, or at least one of the biggest indicators, for whether it's a buyer's market or a seller's market. If houses are getting listed and they're selling 7 to 10 days, or rather they're going under contract 7 to 10 days, 14 days after being listed, those are pretty, that's a pretty clear sign that we're in a seller's market. So in Yachats, homes do tend to sit a little bit longer, but if it's one of the most expensive areas on the Oregon coast. You're looking at a median list price of $755,000. So it's not like this is necessarily an area where you can come in and get, a 2,500 square foot 4-bedroom house for $500,000. Again, you're looking at a median sale price of $755,000, and I think a lot of that is because you have this elevation in town, you have these sweeping views, and oceanfront, beachfront, ocean view. These are the things that add the most value to any home up and down the Oregon coast. And so you have a high concentration of the homes in Yachats with this dynamic. And it's a very clean, safe community with a lot to offer as well, all of the things that we talked about. So it is very desirable. So, just because of the way the town is overall and everything it offers, the views that you can get, the beautiful homes that are there, that's why you see such an elevated median list price. And the demand is there. I mean, the housing market across the country has been rapidly increasing in the last couple of years. Yachats is no exception. The median list price is up 28% year over year from 2021 to now. So I think it is worth mentioning that you can get smaller homes. You can get homes in the, maybe 400 to 550, 350 to 550 range, but these are generally going to be homes that need quite a bit of work, or they're going to be much smaller. You can get some, smaller kind of cottage bungalow type homes, maybe 800 to 1,000 square feet, 1 or 2 bedroom, 1 bathroom, that kind of thing. So those opportunities do exist in the area. But again, because the housing stock is so small to begin with, these opportunities don't pop up very often. So whereas it is a buyer's market on one hand, on the other hand, there are people who have their sights set on Yachats and they're just waiting for the right opportunity to come up. And, they might be moving a little slower because, they're not buying locally necessarily. They're coming in from out of the area or out of state. So there's more steps that you have to take in that circumstance, obviously. So if a house is listed today, it looks great. You might need to arrange airfare, fly out to Oregon, book somewhere to stay, drive south from PDX or from the airport in Eugene. And, all of those things can happen pretty quickly. But typically that's over the course of weeks where you're doing a little bit of due diligence up front. You're arranging for a time to come see the property. I mean, that could be a month later. And so I think that probably is something that lends a little bit, at least, to the longer days on market, because this isn't a place that doesn't have demand, and the inventory is low. So high demand, low inventory, that's typically a recipe for a seller's market. I think because it's not as easily accessible, and again, you're not getting as many people buying locally, homes are just gonna sit a little bit longer. It's gonna take a little bit longer to sell these properties. So all right, so that's Yachats for you. I hope there was some good information in there. I hope that sheds a little more light on Yachats and what Yachats has to offer. And hopefully now when you're looking at a map, you're saying Yachats and not Yachats. And if this video is helpful, make sure to hit the like button. That really helps us out. And if you are relocating to Oregon and thinking about buying a home on the Oregon coast, make sure to give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email, or again, click the link down below in the description of the video. Schedule a Zoom call with us. We can talk about your move, your timeline, and put a game plan together. If you want to get more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell to get notified every time we drop a new video. We really appreciate you watching, and until next time, we'll talk to you later. So we're in Yachats, Oregon, which doesn't get a ton of notoriety. It's a pretty small town, but it is as quaint can be. It's got some awesome little cottages down pretty close to the ocean, and then up in the hills you get some pretty massive houses with just sweeping ocean views. $1 million views, no doubt, and maybe not quite $1 million prices. So, this little town's got everything you need, nothing that you don't, and it's just an awesome little place.
Yeah, you got some nice little restaurants, people eating outdoor here. You got breweries, also a lot of scenic spots. You got Thor's Well just to the south of us, which is one of the most popular attractions on the Oregon coast, as well as Cape Perpetua. So there's a lot of great spots for all you amateur or professional videographers or photographers that want to come take that perfect picture that maybe you've probably seen of the Oregon coast before. It was probably somewhere along here, so great spot for the views.